What's going on, everybody? It is the NFL Experts. It's a three-man show today. I'm Wayne G, joined by Mark D and Sully. Mark, what's going on?
Same old, man. I always say same shit, bigger pile, because it's always a pile of something, you know?
And Sully joining the show for the whole show, not just the segment. We're going to be talking nothing but NFL draft stuff today.
I mean, it's my Christmas time. Let's do this.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I did mention we are going to be talking offensive tackles and interior offensive linemen. Sully has a list of tiers like we did with the quarterbacks and receivers. So we're going to get into that. And then we're going to talk about our mock drafts. We each did a mock draft. We're going to have questions and criticism for mock drafts, even though mine's pretty good. You know, there's always a little work, I guess, that we could do in some of these things. So before we do dive into all that, like I mentioned, every week, make sure you're following us on social media. That is at NFL Experts Plural Pod on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook at NFL Experts Pod. And if you want to email us, NFLExpertsPod@gmail.com, and we will talk about your topics. So with that out of the way, obviously, you know, I mentioned Sully, you know, we talked about the offensive linemen. You have tackles and interior offensive linemen that we're going to talk about, the big guys in the line. I say let's just dive into tackles. I'll pop up your graphic here. I mean, talk a little bit about the tiers, the guys that are on here, and we'll go from there.
I mean, this tackle class is really good. I'm a big fan of this tackle class. Grant, we're only doing 5-6 guys, but this tackle class goes very deep this year, and there's a ton of talent. Up top, we got Joe Alt in a tier of his own. I just think he is just exactly perfect. Really no faults there, but we can get into that later. Olu Fashanu and Talisi Fulaga are right there together, neck and neck. And then I'm real big on Tyler Guyton. I have him ahead of the other guys, J.C. Latham and Marius Mims. I think he's going to test out the wazoo, and I'm really high on him. And then you also got guys like James Morgan, Grant Barton, Troy Fountainow, all kinds of other guys who have the ability to play tackle. I think a lot of them get moved to the interior. And then you've got like Kingsley, you've got Sumataria, you've got all kinds of guys this year. I think it's going to be a loaded class. You're going to get a ton of guys going the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think was it Goncalves? Is it from Pitt? I guess is another guy.
Yeah, there's a ton. I mean, there's a ton of guys. Patrick Paul from Houston, I think, is going to be an incredibly good player. Dominic Cooney, I think, is another guy that plays inside at the end of the day. But, I mean, there's a lot of guys that are going to go this year in the first 2 rounds.
Now, I want to open up questions. I'll start with Mark. Mark, what sort of questions did you have regarding the tackle position, either in general or in the draft?
Okay, before I get to my questions, I have a little funny anecdote. Back in the day, when me and my dad used to always watch football, we used to talk about the linemen, especially the offensive linemen. We used to always call them tree trunks. That's what he called them. So that's what I've always called them forever. And it kind of makes sense. They're big, they're wide, they got big old limbs, you know. It's just always something funny. So it's funny that we're talking about the tree trunks. But my one question would be, right off the bat, would be, how many you actually think are going to go in the first round? You think all your top tier guys are going to go?
I think 7 have a shot to go in the first round. Yeah, I think 7 have a shot to go in the first round. I think the big 3, I think, go in the top 8. Honestly, they got a chance to go real high. And then the next 3, I think, are locks: J.C. Latham, and Marius Mims, and Tyler Guyton. And then again, it depends on what you view Troy Fountainow and Grant Barton as. But I think they do go in the first round. Again, I think they're going to be taken as interior offensive linemen, but they may be listed as tackles, so I guess that counts as tackle. And then James Morgan, has the ability to sneak in there too. But I think all those guys, I think I'm pretty sure I currently have them all in that first round of the mock too.
I guess my
Well,
question
is it
would be,
because
okay.
this tackle class is so good, or is it because they just like are really, or it's just a really valuable position now?
Both. I think we saw this year that tackle injuries can, pretty much decimate a team. The drop between a starting caliber tackle and a backup tackle is pretty massive. And then having a just average tackle instead of a below average tackle is huge. Like even if you don't have a stud, even just having an average guy is massive. So and you need them on both sides now because I mean I think defensive end and edge in general is one of the positions that's evolving to the point where it's almost becoming like unfair. You've got a lot of like insanely big, insanely strong, insanely fast guys, and you can only get so big to outstrength them while still maintaining, the grace to get to the outside. But it's a combination of both. But this class is really good. I'll say Joe Alt is the second best tackle prospect I've ever graded. Penei Sewell is one. But Joe Alt is the second best I've ever graded. I think he's just absolute perfection. So
Yeah, and I think my question was along that line, which is that, when Jonathan Ogden was drafted, when Orlando Pace was drafted, those guys, when they went up on stage, got their yellow blazer on stage, right? And I'm curious, are there guys like that in this draft? Is Joe Alt that guy? Like he's a Hall of Famer.
I think he is. Very rarely do offensive linemen fail. Like when they have the years of tape he has. He's got 2,100 college snaps. So he showed up as a 4-star, started 8 games for Notre Dame at left tackle, then started 13 games the year after that, and then started 12 games this past year. Over 2,100 snaps. He has 4 penalties. He does not commit penalties. He's 6'8". He's 330. He gets low for leverage. He has to get in the 3-point stance. Notre Dame makes their tackles get into 3-point stances. So he's able to get into a 3-point stance. I really do think he's special. Obviously, you don't want to say never. You don't talk in absolutes in the draft. You just don't. But I think it's extremely unlikely that this kid doesn't end up being an all-pro caliber tackle. And I think Fuaga and Olu Fashanu are right there as well. They're day one starters, which is massive. I think they're the only 3 that I would be very comfortable with as day one starters. I think Guyton, Latham, and Mims end up being day one starters, but it's not ideal. I think all 3 of them have a lot of growing to do. But the top 3 are day one starters, and I think all like above average players.
All right. And Mark, anything else?
I'm trying to think. So like you were saying, Latham and Guyton, they'll probably maybe go at the end of the first round. Like, who do you see going at the top of the second?
I actually have Latham. I have Guyton, I think, right now going 18 to Cincinnati, I think is where I had him in the draft. In the mock that I sent you guys. Yeah, I do. And then Latham 21. That's like the next group. After that, I do have Jordan Morgan sneaking in at 31 too. Graham Barton, if you count him as a tackle, I think he goes close to Arizona at the top. But then the guys after that are going to, in my opinion, I've got Kingsley Sumatia, Kyrian Amagajide, and then Patrick Paul is like my next 3. I'm a big Patrick Paul guy because he's like an actual left tackle. So I'm a big Patrick Paul guy. I'd take him really high.
Now, I had a question about a specific player, but it transitions into an overall question. So in my mock draft, and we'll get to that in the second half of the show here, but in my mock draft, I have the Dolphins taking Jordan Morgan at tackle, but with the intention of playing him at guard initially. Mm-hmm. And my question for you is, first of all, is that a legitimate move for Jordan Morgan, who's only 6'4" and has only played tackle in college? And secondly, are there teams that will draft a guy who's only played tackle with the sole intention of not even trying them at tackle, but just putting them in the interior?
Yeah, I think Troy Fatnow is going to be one for sure. He's been an incredibly talented left tackle at Washington.
Knock it off.
I think he's a potential to be an All-Pro left guard. Um, Again, same with Graham Barton. I think Graham Barton has the ability to play center, if I'm being honest. But yeah, Jordan Morgan's the other one that it's just the way he's built. He's 6'4", but he's also he's not going to be super long. Granted, I think he's going to meet the threshold for arms with tackles, but it's going to be barely kind of thing. Who's the kid who went to the Titans last year? Skoronski. Like Skoronski, yeah, he met the thresholds and he could have played tackle and probably would have been a good tackle, but he has the chance to be an incredible guard. And the Titans threw him at guard, and he played extremely well for a rookie season at guard. So I think there's a lot of guys. Like I said, Jordan Morgan, Graham Barton, and Troy Fatnow all go, I think, first round, but with the intention of playing guard that can play tackle in a pinch.
And we did get a question from Jim Powell, who's our resident Raiders fan, and he says, who's going to be the best left tackle on the board at 13?
Perfect. I got him taking Talizi Fuaga, which I think would be an incredible pick for Las Vegas. They've already got one of the better left tackles in the league in Colt Miller. Tho Talizi, who's a natural right tackle over there. They want to run the football. That's been known, and Talizi Fuaga is the best, in my opinion, the best run blocking tackle in this draft. So I think that's a perfect fit. I love it, honestly, with them. I also have them getting a quarterback, with a different pick. So it works out there.
Any questions, Mark, on tackle before we get into interior linemen?
I do. Sort of on the same lines as what Wayne was asking. Well, some of these guys are tackles. Are they gonna I know some especially play right tackle, some especially play left tackle. Is there if they draft one of these guys, can they let's say a guy is left tackle, could they and try to train him to be a right tackle? Or is that just something that teams don't want to put the effort into?
Oh, they can, and I'm assuming a lot will. I think a couple are going to be limited. Like J.C. Latham has strictly been a right tackle. I think he is a right tackle. I don't think you flip him to the left side. I like Tyler Guyton has only played right tackle, but I actually like him on the left side. Now, granted, he's a little more athletic. I think he's going to test much better than J.C. Latham. Amarius Mims is another guy who has only played on the right side for Georgia, but I think has the athletic ability to play on the left side. So it will all depend on if the coach, for one, if they need a left, and for two, if it's something that makes sense. I saw Wayne had a comment on one of his where he took, I think it was Latham to the Saints at 14, I believe it was. And somebody bashed him oh, the Saints already have Ramczyk, we don't need a tackle. It's well, you do need a tackle. You need a left tackle very bad because Pennington, that's his name, is just awful. And so, Latham may not be the ideal pick to go to the left side, but I think he has the ability to. So, you take a tackle there and then put him on the left side and don't hope he works, obviously, but then coach him to make it work.
And we do have a question from Mark Levette. That's another one of that's Mark's friend here. And Mark, I'm going to get to your question. It's going to be part of the mock draft section. So I don't want to ruin it here because it is more applicable to that than it is to this here. But let's dive into interior offensive linemen now. Again, I'll throw the tiers up there and you just kind of walk us through a little bit.
All right. So I've been talking these guys ad nauseum. Troy Fatnow, my number one interior offensive lineman. I think he'll play guard. Jackson Powers Johnson will be a center. Those two are just incredible players. Graham Barton there in tier 2 by himself. I think he has the ability to play all across the line. Christian Hayes and Zach Frazier. Christian Hayes is an interior player, will be a guard most likely, and Zach Frazier's a stud center. I think all of these players go top 50 for sure. Christian Hayes is one that came up out of the Senior Bowl and just really put on a show. Was probably the best lineman there and really made himself a lot of money. I think he goes early now, much earlier than he was. I had a 3rd round grade on him, but I think he goes now. I have an early 2nd. He just ticked a lot of boxes, answered a lot of questions that he didn't have the ability to answer to at UConn. But the guys at the top, Troy Fatnow is just, I just think he's prototypical for a guard. He's 6'4", 315. He's not gonna, be overly lanky or things like that. So he's able to stay compact, and I think he's just a perfect modern day left tackle. He can maul in the run game, but he's also a very good pass protector. So
And I did have a question in terms of interior linemen, which is obviously we talk about all the time tackles that they get moved to guard, and it seems almost like a no-brainer. Oh well, just move them to guard, like it's just
yeah.
not an afterthought. But my question is like, how difficult is it to move from guard to center?
Um, Honestly, I haven't seen much like have a huge issue with it as long as you can get the snapping down. Now the biggest issue now is shotgun, and that. But a lot of kids who play guard are working with centers anyway because they know it's going to have to happen someday. You play interior unless you're, 6'3", 360. If you're anywhere like in that 305 to 330 range, you've got the ability to move inside to center. I think they just kind of have that taught to them already. But like Graham Barton's like the one kid, like I said, he played left tackle his entire career at Duke. Um, the Senior Bowl was going to have him test at guard and center. He unfortunately had to back out for injury, but it's still more likely that that's where he plays in the league, interior. And a lot of what I'm hearing is it will be center. So I think center is just becoming a pretty valuable position now, with all the call outs and things they have to do. So I think it's like becoming extremely vital that teams have a very good center.
All right.
Okay, my question would be, but the set, like you said, transferring guard to center, but don't centers have to like help with coverages, and don't you have to be a little bit smarter to be a center?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like I just said, a lot of teams I think value center more now because of the call outs they have to do. You have to recognize certain blitz calls, and you have to then tell linemen which way you're sliding most of the time and things like that. Again, I don't know how smart you have to be. It's more about retaining
I guess
information.
that was the
than
wrong
it is.
word, but
Yeah. But I don't know. I think a lot of these guys, especially, I don't want to say a lot, but Graham Barton coming from Duke, that's a school that's notable for their academics. So I don't think we have to worry about him there. And that like plays into it. But it all depends. Again, it's those are within the private workouts. Those are speaking to the guy. Those are things that are on the whiteboard that I don't get privilege of seeing, or knowing. Where if you go, hey, write your coverages up here and your assignments for all your linemen. If the linebacker's over the A gap in this play, you know what I mean? Or if the nose tackle's lined up, right above you, and then you've got a lineman stacked in the B gap, whatever it may be. What are your call outs and things like that. But yeah, I do think it's becoming more and more vital and more important. I don't think it was like a very important position in like the normal like thought process of things, but I think it's now an important position. I mean, you see the last couple Super Bowl winners, they all have, in my opinion, they all have all pro centers. So I think it's rather important.
And before I get into my next question, Jim Powell does ask another question. He says, I still think offensive line is the most important spot in the field. A great quarterback that spends all his time running for his life isn't going to be a great quarterback. That said, he's curious, the best guards in second or third round. I know you showed your tiers. Is there anybody that wasn't on those tiers that would be a good third round pick, second round pick?
Yeah, Christian Mahogany is going to go. Cooper Beebe. I mentioned Dominic Pooney. I think he'll be one of the players that goes in that spot. Guard's not super deep this year. I think like after that, you've got a guy like Mason McCormick out of South Dakota State who I think some teams are going to be higher on than others. But after that, I think it'll drop a little and you won't see a ton come off the board. Tackle was one of the deeper positions. Guard's actually one of the more shallow positions in the league or in the draft.
All right, perfect. And then he follows up here and he says, big on big, baby, then get after it.
Yeah, it's fun.
So here's a question I had, which is, this surprised me when I was reading scouting reports about different interior offensive linemen. I played football in high school. People may not find that hard to believe. I'm not going to, disillusioned at all. I am the worst high school football player in the history of the country. I am really if there were negative stars, that was me. So, but what I remember is that our offensive linemen, and I've heard this is true at every level, love to run block. Like they love getting out there and just leveling guys, right? Pass blocking stinks. You got it's defensive. Run blocking's offensive, so people like to run block. When I read a scouting report about a guard or an interior offensive lineman and it says he's better at pass blocking than run blocking, to me, that's almost like a red flag, isn't it? Because how do you not like run blocking as an interior lineman?
It's not that he may not like it. It's like if a team may not do it, so therefore he may not be adept at it. Like that, especially in college, like they run like a lot of like zone read and things like that. Their
and they run a lot of spread, so they're not really.
They run a lot of spread. So like the run blocking prowess may not be there. That's not to say they don't enjoy it. But I mean, I don't love. I mean, in my opinion, like your tackles pass block, your guards and centers run block. That's just kind of like the adage that you grew up on, and I still think it holds weight to this day. I mean, that's what they should excel at. They obviously you want them to be good at everything, but I think that's like what their main job should be. And so not liking in general. If you don't like to run block as an offensive lineman, as a tackle, guard, or center, I think that's a red flag.
Anything to add, Mark?
No, I'm kind of really excited to get into our mocks.
Okay, well, I've got one more thing before we get into that, which is this is an observation because you hear all the time people talk about like the first round picks, or everyone thinks wide receiver, quarterback, skill positions, right? And you hear people say all the time, "Oh, if you need an offensive lineman, you just get him in the third or fourth round, and that's fine." And yet, I looked up the last 5 years of all pros, first and second team. 75% of them were first round picks. So if you want a good offensive lineman, first round is where you're going to get them.
Yeah. So that's, I think, my new big thing and my new pattern in a lot of these mocks. That's why like in my mock draft, you'll see, like I said, I think I've got, let me do a count real quick. I think I've got 7 or 8 going. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I got 8 in the first round, which I think would break the record. But wide receivers and corners and things like that can be found later in the draft is becoming a pattern now. Now that's not to say you don't take Marvin Harrison or you don't take Malik Neighbors or things like that, but when you identify, goes for edge rushers as well. Like if you look up edge rushers, the same stat applies. Most first team All Pros, most Pro Bowlers are taken in the first round. There are traits you identify that are going to be precursors to success in the NFL. The same thing applies for offensive linemen, in my opinion, and you take them early when they're available, and then you take a Xavier Worthy or a Jalen Polk in round 2, and things like that, because guys that are Amarius Mims size that are 6'7", 360, but move like he does. I mean, they don't make them. Like, you know what I mean? Like they don't make those human beings. They come around very rarely, and when they do, you make sure you have one. So.
All right. And Jim Powell does say Tony Banderas was just misunderstood.
Tony Banderas was one. Robert Gallery was one of the bigger misses that I remember. But he was a very good guard. But he was a guy who I thought just was everything perfect as a tackle prospect, and turned out not to be. But that's why I said you can't ever talk in nevers and absolutes. There's always a possibility.
Now, when we get to our mock drafts here, before we dive into it, Mark Levette did have a question that is relevant to our mock drafts. In a sense, he wants to know, and I'll put his question up here. He wants to know which team will be making the best trade up or down in the first or second round. Now, I will say this. We didn't do any trades in our mocks, but if you foresee, I will say, and I'll let Sully and Mark give their takes as well, I think the Patriots are definitely trading down from 3. I don't think they're taking a player there, but I don't know if that's going to be the best trade or not. And how about you, Sully? What do you think in terms of trades?
I do think that's the most likely spot for a trade down. I just don't know if it's going to happen there. I think the best deal that's going to be made, and I'll preach it till I die. Las Vegas getting Fields for 44. I think that's a really good trade for both teams that I think makes a ton of sense. I think we were talking about this earlier today. I think Philadelphia has the ammo to make a giant splash in this year's draft. They have 2 seconds. They've got a third. They've got 22. They've got a disgruntled A.J. Brown. I think they've got a lot of ammo to move up and get somebody that they covet if they really want to. So, and then the other team is Cincinnati. That's the team I've been moving up a lot. I've got them moving T. Higgins and a first to come up to 5 and take Joe Alt in front of Tennessee and the Giants. You throw Joe Alt, who I am extremely high on as a tackle prospect. You put him there and let him protect Joe Burrow for the next 15 years. I think that's a match made in heaven, truthfully.
And Mark, did you play around with any trades? Like I saw some of your ridiculous trades, but what about realistic trades?
No, that was all in fun. But I think if I had to like predict a serious trade that might happen, I think I might predict Atlanta maybe moving up. We'll try to move up to top 3 so they can get Jane and Daniels because he might not last till their 8th pick or whatever it is. That would be my prediction.
All right. Well, let's start with some of our mock drafts here. And Sully, since you're the draft expert, we'll put you on the spot first. So I do have your mock draft. I'll flash it up here for everybody. It's a little warped because I had to elongate it for the screen. But obviously, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, 3 quarterbacks, 1, 2, 3, Marvin Harrison, and so on. I'll leave it up there for a second. Anything that we should know before we get into our cross-examination of your mock?
Yeah, like in a non-trade mock, it's difficult. Like I think a guy like JJ McCarthy doesn't last to 12, but which obviously changes things around. And then, like the corners are going to be really interesting. You've got this group that everybody's kind of jumbled together. And then the combine's coming up, and I think it's going to be extremely telling. Nate Wiggins is going to just put on a special show. The kid's an athletic freak. He's going to jump in the 40s and run in the 4.3s, and it's going to be fun to watch. So I think he's going to go super early, but it's just tough to find a spot for all these guys. You got a ton of talent this year, and like I said, big guys go early, so it's tough for me not to take guys like Jared Verse and Dallas Turner and things like that. But overall, I love it. I think it's going to be an incredible draft. It's very talented.
And on the trade front, Mark did agree with you. He said, I was thinking Cincy too, need better O-line for sure.
Yeah, they do. And I think a tag and trade with T. Higgins. Yeah, and a tag and trade with T. Higgins just makes sense. You tag him, you trade him. I don't think you have the ability to pay him, Jamar Chase, Trey Hendrickson, all these guys. I just don't think you have the ability to pay them all. So move on from T. Higgins, find a wide receiver anywhere because they grow on trees, and then get a guy like Joe Alt on a cheap 5-year rookie deal, and I think you're in a good spot.
Well, Mark, you're my co-counsel on this. What would you say is your first question?
Okay. My first question would be, let me look at your draft again. Why no quarterback for Atlanta at 8 when there's still Bo Nix available and JJ McCarthy?
If the plays out like this and they don't make a move, I think they end up getting a guy like Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, something like that. I don't think that I think the need at receiver is equally as great. So it's tough for me to have them pass on a guy like Neighbors there. I just have Neighbors much higher on the board. And so you add a guy like Neighbors with Drake London, with the Kyle Pitts, and then you just put, honestly, anybody back there. And I think they'll be extremely talented. I do think they'll be in the JJ McCarthy mix when it's all said and done. But they're just a team I feel like is going to go with one of the veteran options. And then Fields is also an option for them too. So I don't have them going Fields because I still think he goes to Vegas because of that connection. But that's why I don't have them going quarterback.
I'm glad you brought up Neighbors because my first question was in our quarterbacks receivers special. You talked about how Neighbors and MHJ are on the same level. They're both tier 1 guys, and then there's a drop. And yet in your mock, you have Odunze going before Neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious the reasoning on that.
More fit wise, the Giants do not have a big bodied possession wide receiver, and it's needed dearly. They've got guys like Wando Robinson, who is, not obviously Malik Neighbors is far and away better than what he is. But I do think that Rome Odunze just fits better. Like, I think Rome Odunze would be the pick by Vegas too if they decide to go receiver over Malik Neighbors. I just think he's more of what they like in receiver. He's big, he's physical, he can run after the catch. He can separate really well too. I have Odunze as a top 10 player overall, so it's not like the drop off is big. I'm also very high on Malik Neighbors. So,
all right.
Sometimes it's more about fit. Like I said, I do it as, what I think the team will do in that situation, not like necessarily what I would do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And Mark?
Okay, so my next question would be, okay, so we were talking about that New Orleans needed a tackle, and you have them drafting Latu.
Yeah.
Well, what's your reasoning behind that one?
I don't like the tackle options over Leatu Latu there. They also need edge bad, real bad. I think it's actually their biggest need is an edge player. And then Leatu Latu is, again, I just think an extremely good fit. They like big, physical pass rushers. Cam Jordan has been there for a long time, and honestly, Leatu Latu's comp in my draft, board is Cam Jordan. I think they play extremely similar. They're both technicians who have heavy hands and defend the edge extremely well. I just think he's an incredibly good fit, and I don't love. So the only left tackle there that I like is Tyler Guyton, and I don't really love him at 14, especially over Latu. I have him going 18, but again, that's more Cincinnati's in a tough spot there. They have to get somebody to protect Joe Burrow. So
before I get into my next question, I do want to put Jim Powell's comment up here. He says, "Does this mock mean the Raiders are getting Fields? I agree with a pick at 13. Who is the Levis of this year? Who gets left behind?"
I think Michael Penix is the Levis this year. I think he ends up being left out of the first round, or maybe sneaks in late. But yeah, if you know Jim, the old GM of the Bears during the regime of that picked Justin Fields was the interim GM of the Las Vegas Raiders and is now the current assistant GM of the Las Vegas Raiders. So I think that they make a push for Fields for pick 44. That's what I'm going to preach. I'm going to scream it from the mountaintops until something else happens. I think it just makes too much sense. So yeah, I have them getting Fields in this mock.
Now, the second observation I made here is that the Eagles have their top 4 corners come back from last year, and you have them taking Quinyon Mitchell at corner with 22. And I was curious the thought behind taking that corner when they have so much depth there already coming back.
Because they're trash cans.
James Bradbury and
Darius
Slay.
Darius Slay played like garbage this year. It's why they lost their last.
Bradbury was trash.
They were both awful. They both are going to cost a ton against the cap when they don't need to. They're both on the bad side of 30. They need to be off this team. And Quinyon Mitchell is, again, I draft more scheme fit when it's players that jumble together. Quinyon Mitchell is a perfect scheme fit for Philadelphia. He will a seamless transition for them and will be a day one starter. That's why I think Philadelphia's corner situation is bad right now. Yeah, I know they need receiver, and I don't hate a Troy Franklin pick there because I actually think he's going to be very special at the combine. But again, Quinyon Mitchell, what he did at the Senior Bowl and what he's going to do at the combine as well, I think ends up going before this pick. So, but in any case, I love that pick. It's one of my favorite picks of the whole lot.
Anything else, Mark?
Okay, so my next question would be, why a wide receiver for Jacksonville when you have Kirk and Ridley already?
I don't know if they re-signed Ridley for one, and Kirk's coming off an injury that ended his season last year. They also don't have a number one receiver. Calvin Ridley has shown he's not a number one. He performed pretty poorly this year. Brian Thomas is 6'4", 205. He's your big body number one kind of guy. I think he's a perfect addition to that team. And again, I don't know if they re-sign Ridley. If they re-sign Ridley, they lose a second round pick. I don't know if he's worth that. So, and they're going to have to take that into account. If they don't re-sign him, they just lose a third rounder. So I think that's a lot harder to swallow, losing a second round pick for a guy who, I don't even think he got to 1,000 yards last year.
Jim Powell does ask, I'm guessing this is in relation to Khalil Mack, but I apologize if I'm wrong, Jim. He says, does the entire league make a move on Mack for picks? He's got to be worth a little. Well, obviously, the Chargers have 4 players making $30 million a year that they're either going to have to restructure or let go. What do you think about Khalil Mack? Is he worth, or what's he worth in terms of draft picks? Because he's over 30 as well.
I don't know. It depends on the compensation. I've seen a lot of those come up on ESPN now, like the random, like what player moves now for like a late pick. Like who was the other one I just saw? I think it was Jamal Adams getting moved, and then
Yeah, I heard that
somebody
too.
else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but any guy like that age 33 and coming off that kind of year, I just don't love. Hassan Reddick is the guy I'd go after if I'm moving picks for a player. He's got 4 years of double-digit sacks. He's done it for multiple schemes. He may be a liability in certain aspects of the game with his run and support and things like that. But, I mean, you give me 12, 13 sacks a season and you create pressure in the rate he does, that I think is worth like a second rounder. Otherwise, like Khalil Mack, like I guess, I mean, I'd throw like a 4th or a 5th, but like even still, that's a vital pick now. That's a lot to give up. So I'm not sure. And no, if you want to put up the other comment from Jim, it's Champ Kelly. It's not Getsy.
Yeah, because I thought Fields and Getsy didn't gel well, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's Champ Kelly who was the interim GM there, and then and now he's over in Las Vegas.
All right. I didn't have any additional questions. I don't know, Mark, did you have anything before we get to yours?
Nah, you guys hit me with mine. Go for it.
All right. So I'll throw yours up there. Mark, obviously, again, Marvin Harrison at 1. That's going to be my first question. Then, of course, Caleb Williams and the quarterbacks, neighbors to the Cardinals. We're kind of leaving up there for a little bit for people. Anything you want to say, again, in your own defense before we go in on you?
Okay. So you guys right away talking about Marvin Harrison. In my scenario, the Bears decide to keep Fields, and so they build around him and they draft Marvin Harrison Jr.
Well, the only reason that's ridiculous is because if you're gonna decide that, you have to move out of 1. Then you can't stay at 1. I get it's a no trade mock. I understand that. I'm bashing you for something you can't control.
That's the only reason why I didn't trade or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that, but like caveat that with that maybe because you can't. I don't hate staying with Fields and not. I hate it, but staying at 1 and taking Marvin Harrison would be one of the biggest fails just because
But let me get to my other caveat, Sully.
Yeah.
My other caveat is I think Williams is going to make it known he doesn't want to go to Chicago. So the Bears are going to make a big decision, or they keep Fields. They decide to keep Fields in my scenario.
I mean, I don't know. I don't hate it. I guess I think if he
I know
tries
you
to play,
don't agree with it, but it's just
yeah, if he tries to play that card, I think the Bears take him and make him sit a year. And I don't think Caleb Williams has the ability to sit a year. I think he'd lose a
you think they
lot
would
of
really do
money.
that?
Yeah, I do. I think they keep
Huh.
Fields in that case and then take him. You don't get he doesn't have any eligibility to go back to anymore and things like that. Granted, I guess he can make some NIL money and stuff, but well, he can't because he ran out of that. But he could do his like own advertising and things. But um, like I don't know where all that came from. Where he said he'd demand a piece and things like that. I don't think that ever was real. I think his agent knows that he can't do that. His team should know he can't do that, and they would advise him, "Hey, this is stupid, right?" Like, so I don't know if I believe that, and I don't know. Everything I've heard is that he's just going to play ball. So I don't hate it, and it's nice to talk about, and it is a scenario that we have to talk about because it can happen. So I don't mind it, but and like I said, I'll never say absolutes. I won't. I think that would be highly unlikely. But
I had two thoughts,
Well, I'm not saying
and
this
one of
was
them
an
I text.
absolute, but it was.
yeah,
Go for it, Wade.
No, I mentioned this to Mark yesterday. We had a back and forth about it. I said there is really only one situation I could foresee where Marvin Harrison goes number one, and that would be if the Bears prior to the trade or prior to the draft traded up to 3. I said then I would take Harrison at 1 and take a quarterback at 3, because if you don't, then you risk that wide receiver being gone at 2. Somebody trades up to get him at 2.
yeah, I guess. I don't. Yeah, again, I think that's highly unlikely. Even I don't even think Washington would move out at that point. They would run to take Caleb Williams. Um, I mean, I think we all know, the connection and blah blah blah, and Caleb's from that area and this and
Kingsbury.
that. Yeah. So I don't think Washington. I mean, there's a lot of reports coming out now that they're trying to make a move up to 1 to secure Caleb Williams, which I actually think everything I hear is Chicago's actually open to, depending on the compensation, and it sounds like it's going to be quite a lot. So that I think is more likely, but I don't know. It's all I guess has the ability to happen, but I think would be extremely rare. Uh, uh, Outside of that, though, I don't hate it. I like Drake May going to 3. I don't think there's all this discussion. I'll ask Wayne too, pretty much the same question. I can just ask you now. Why why Jaden Daniels over Drake May? I don't think it makes any sense. So I do like that. Byron Murphy's really high in this. Is there any reason why you have him going that high?
Well, dude, I'm gonna complain to PFF for changing the rankings and stuff in the middle of me making my mock. So I thought he was like the best ranked defensive line help that there was out there. So that's why I put him there.
Oh.
And they really need defensive
line
help. This is like I said in my scenario. If they pick Fields, they need weapons around him and stuff. So I just went with because they really need defensive defensive line help.
I don't disagree there. I like I said, I think Jared Verse is a solid pick there. I like Dallas Turner there as well. I just think that's early for Byron Murphy, but I've got the same question for oh no, I don't. I thought Wayne. I thought you had Byron Murphy. Oh, I have the same question for Wayne about Jerzon Newton at 9. So you guys both have him taking a D tackle. So which I think is a little ridiculous, but party on, Wayne. Michael Penix in the first. That's an interesting take.
I put that one
interesting.
because they need a quarterback. That's why Jimmy G is going to be cut. I don't think Aiden O'Connell's the guy. I feel like the Raiders are going to make a Raider move, and they're going to take a chance on this guy because they think he's good.
I hear you. I would like to see them move up from 44 if they like Penix, or just take him at 44. 13's just so rich for him though. But quarterbacks go early, man. Quarterbacks go early. So
One of my
overall,
questions I had.
it's not bad.
One of my questions I had here for you, Mark,
Right
was
on. Thank you, Sully.
the Colts going with a cornerback and their pick, which I don't hate because the Colts I think do need a cornerback, but Brian Thomas was still on the board when you took corner here, and I think don't they need a receiver more than they need a corner?
I don't know. I felt like they needed a corner more, dude. Their secondary was repeatedly burned last year because like all their guys are young rookies with inexperience. Their best corner is Kenny Moore, and he's going to be a free agent. I feel like they're going to be really weak at that position, so they go through it in the draft.
I actually agree with you.
Cool.
I think corners the bigger need there. Now, granted, I have the same exact pick as you, but I think, and then again, that's fit. I think Cooper DeJean is, just an ideal fit for their defense there. He's going to be a chess piece that I think they can use in a lot of different ways. But I don't hate the Brian Thomas pick either, to be fair. So.
And then I had here another surprise. You went really corner. All my questions were about corners a lot. I've cornered to the Ravens. They're losing 2 offensive linemen, 2 defensive ends, 3 wide receivers, and 2 linebackers, and you have them going corner in the first round.
Didn't go corner to the Ravens.
No, I had that.
No, I went tackle.
Which I also think is a little odd, to be fair.
Okay, well, then that's not bad. I don't know why I had corner. I was looking at the wrong one.
Yeah.
And then my last one I had here for you,
so
Mark, is the. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Wayne.
No, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say I had you have the. I think there's a delay with you. So the Chiefs, you have them going wide receiver, which I like them going wide receiver here, but you have a Donnie Mitchell over Keon Coleman. I was curious if you had any particular reason why you like him over Coleman.
I went Mitchell over Coleman just based on size. I think Coleman is 6'3". I think Adonai Mitchell was 6'4". And I just think they really need a wide receiver. They're like really weak at that position. And they need someone to like help them to become like that's the one piece that they're missing. And I think that if they get somebody that's taller and bigger target from Mahomes, the better.
Okay.
All right.
So
I think Keon Coleman's going to end up being bigger than AD Mitchell. But I actually don't. I struggle between AD Mitchell and Keon Coleman there because I think Keon Coleman's a better athlete. AD Mitchell's a better athlete than Keon Coleman. I think he can stretch the field a little better, but I think Keon Coleman's better at contested catches. I think both have a issue with separation, which I don't think it's going to matter as much when you've got a guy like Patrick Mahomes. Just catch the football. He's going to put it there. Just catch the football. And I think both of them excel at that. I honestly think those picks are kind of interchangeable. So I don't hate it. But I do. I have Coleman ahead of AD Mitchell. But in his defense, I don't hate it. We all saw that play against Washington where AD like pretty much hovers in the air for that fade. That's a great play. So you get those kind of plays with Patrick Mahomes. I do think that is what they need.
Okay, so my Baltimore Ravens pick, the reason why I picked the tackle is because both of their tackles are coming off injury, Stanley and Moses, and they're going to need help at like depth at that position. And I feel like the Ravens are the type of team that they're going to go for a tackle, like because they know it's a prize need for most teams, and I just feel like them going that way.
I don't hate it. I just think with what's on the board, it may be a little different. But I don't hate it. They're a team that drafts certain positions in the first round, and like they stick to that. And tackle is one of them. So I don't hate tackle there. I also don't think Fat now plays tackle. So, that's kind of my gripe with it there. But he can play tackle in a pinch. So.
Well, why is he listed as tackle then?
because he played tackle his entire career in college. He's been a left tackle his entire career at Washington. I don't think he plays tackle in the league though. Like Peter Skoronski was listed as a tackle in the draft guide for the entire time. The Titans started him at left guard.
Okay, so that's my inexperience of knowing that some of
okay.
these guys are
I mean,
considered guards. I didn't know that.
Again, I don't hate it because I think he's a guy who you can start at guard, and then if you like, let's say Moses goes down, you pop him out to tackle, and you feel better with him at tackle than you do another guy. So,
okay.
Yeah, nobody's judging you. Enjoy your last show.
All right. Well, this was nice, guys.
Yeah, so jumping into mine, and I'll throw this up here, and then I'll make kind of my opening statement defense here on some of the things. The way I did this, unlike Sully, I did not do what I think is going to happen. I did what I would do if I was the GM of each of these teams when the pick came up on the clock. Again, kind of just basing everything off of what they're losing in free agency, or who's aging, or who's going to be a free agent 2 years from now, and really just kind of planning out what I would do as the GM. And so I threw it up there. That's what I got. Obviously, Caleb Williams, the big thing. Jaden Daniels at 2. I know that Sully doesn't like. And my reasoning behind that, and I know that's probably going to be the big question. I've been saying for months now, I keep doing that. I've been saying for months now that I think Jaden Daniels, when all is said and done, all the workouts are done, has a chance to surprise people and be the first overall pick in the draft because of how talented he is. It's just a talent grab. So I don't think it's that big of a stretch if Williams goes 1, then Washington says, all right, well, we didn't get Williams. That was our guy. We're going to take, Daniels at 2.
Yeah. I mean, I hate it, but I mean, I knew you were going to go there. So it's not like it wasn't shocking. I hate New England passing on Drake May more.
That was going to be one of my questions too.
Yeah. I just think he's just, I mean, prototype, perfect kind of thing. But I get how do you? There's so many holes in New England. Like, how do you build? Now, granted, I still think you take the quarterback and then build, but so I'm not going to beat that one to death. My bigger takeaway is no JJ McCarthy at all in the first round.
I did not have JJ in the first round. As I was going through each of the picks and addressing the needs, it just kind of like he just kept slipping. So maybe that, if to answer Jim's question, who my Levis would be, it would be JJ McCarthy, because every time a pick would come up, I was like, all right, well, they don't really need quarterback. They don't need a quarterback. I know you can probably point to, 11, 12, 13, or 10, 11, 12, whatever in that range. But I just didn't go that route. I felt like a bigger need for Minnesota was edge. So.
Over the most important position.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. That was going to be my question: is why no quarterback at 12 for the Broncos for my team, or for the Raiders? You got Bo Nix. Why wouldn't we pick Bo Nix?
I just feel like the Broncos are going to stick with Russell Wilson. That was my thing, where I think they're sticking with him. It just doesn't make any sense to give the guy $85 million over the next 2 years, whatever, against it. Just let him play for somebody else. You stick with him, you see how you can do. And then you can look at the position maybe next year when he costs you half that, or even a quarter of that, because you can cut him after June 1st next year. And it's only, 24 million or 22 million against the cap.
McCarthy.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard Wayne, but Russell Wilson is putting his house up for sale. So he's good as gone in Denver.
I do hate the Steelers passing on McCarthy. That bugs me. But I can live with that. Overall, I don't hate this one. I don't like Jacksonville taking Latu. I think they have to bring Allen back. I don't think you can let Josh Allen walk out of the door. So they franchise him. They just took Trayvon Walker, who, for all his faults, you've got to give that kid time to develop. You just have to. I actually do think this third year the light kind of ticks and he plays better. So I don't love that pick, especially considering, they've got needs at corner, they've got needs at center, they've got needs at receiver, they've got needs at, interior defensive line that I think they could have addressed other than edge. I don't love that.
My next question would be why Murphy for the Cowboys at 24?
I felt like they needed interior defensive line help. I think obviously Micah Parsons just came out in an interview and said, I want two things. I want a downhill linebacker and I want a big interior defensive lineman. Right. So why not? And plus you get that whole the Texas thing. It's works out.
No, I don't hate that pick. I actually like it a lot. I'm a big Byron Murphy guy. I mean, I've got him going Jerzon, but only because I've got Byron Murphy going right before that. The other sneaky pick I've got now is them taking somebody else in like a corner in this spot, and then that Tavondre Sweat kid, the other kid out of Texas, the kid who's like 380 or something like that. He came in there and it performed extremely well at the combine, showed he can actually be a 3-down player. You manage his snaps the first couple of years like Jordan Davis, blah, 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 but overall can be a 3-down player. I like him in Dallas as well, but I don't hate it. We both had Braylon Trice before the fall, which I'd love to see where he actually goes because I'm a big fan of his. I think he's got an incredible motor and he just plays with his head on fire. And his hands are so heavy. So I don't hate that. Both of you had Chris Braswell in the first, though, which I thought was a little surprising. What makes you go Chris Braswell there at 30 for Baltimore?
Again, I think just he was the highest rated edge kind of player, I think, when I was going through.
Okay. Jordan Morgan is 21.
Last
shocked. Why over question. A Guyton or a Mims or a Fatnow for that matter?
Yeah, I guess with Guyton and Mims, I consider them more like true tackles. I don't think Miami needs a tackle. I think they need interior offensive line. And so my idea was to draft Morgan and move him to the interior offensive line because I think Armstead obviously did well at tackle. And then also you have Austin Jackson, who actually didn't do horrible, I felt like last year. So interior offensive line for them.
Okay.
What was that, Mark?
My last question would be why tackle for the Chiefs at 32?
Tackle for the Chiefs at 32. I would have to actually why don't I pull up my draft so I can look at it.
Tyler Gay. I loved it.
Yeah. That one. There we go. So I think because all the I think they need a tackle in there. I think they have a good tackle. They need another tackle on there. I think they need some help in that offensive line side of things. I think that's a good pick there at 32. I think all the receivers were gone, so I didn't really have a receiver for them to grab there, and I felt like tackle was just a better fit.
Yeah, didn't they sign?
I can agree with that with the quarterbacks.
Didn't they sign Dominic Smith to be their stopgap left tackle this year?
I'm not sure. I know that they got the kid. Did they get the kid from Jacksonville at tackle?
They moved him to right tackle. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Because if they did just sign Dominic Smith, to play left, then I do think. I mean, obviously, I think tackle is a huge need then because, I mean, he's not going to be there forever. And then you need somebody to come in and step in. And Guyton's kind of like that perfect guy because he needs a year to probably develop into, an actual starting left tackle in this league. So I don't hate tackle for them. I haven't really thought about tackle for them for a while. I like Demarcus Robinson from Missouri there a lot. I think he'd be a really good pick for them. He's got that. He's a Chris Jones clone. So I think that would be a really, really good pick for them. But yeah, I actually don't hate tackle for them.
Mark Levette comments here. He says, I think Wilson is staying as well, but still pick up Nix for the future. This is so Jim
is the last player you want to sit. He's already like 26 years old.
I think this is where Jim is showing his Raiders fandom here. He says McCarthy will go to LA and Herbert will sit or go to Pittsburgh.
The worst thing Harbaugh could ever do is come in there and ship out a tailor-made, ready-to-go quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, that was the best situation in the league by far because of having Herbert there.
And then he says, what happened to the big kid from Kentucky at KC? Was that Jared Lorenzen? Who's the...
I have he's dead, but...
Did he die?
Yeah, he died.
Oh.
I don't know who they're talking about.
I don't know. That was the big kid from Kentucky when I think of that.
Yeah, that's the only one I think of too.
Oh,
Jared
he says Kennard.
Kennard. I don't even know. I have no idea who that is.
I don't know.
But yeah, Donovan Smith is their tackle. I don't like him. I don't love that in the future for them. So, they did take Wanya, but I don't think that's like their future plan. Yeah, and Jawan Taylor was the kid. But who's this guy talking about?
Oh, it says Kennard. I'm not sure who.
He's talking about a past player or like a nowadays player, like a guy in the draft.
Oh, I don't know. All right.
You stumped us all, Jim.
We had to run through the mock drafts there, and we appreciate everybody participating. We are at the 1 hour mark. Oh, here we go. We got a comment. Maybe Jim is clearing it up here.
Oh, it's Darian Kennard.
Yeah,
he plays
Kennard.
for the Eagles now.
Oh,
that's how he's doing for the Chiefs.
All right, cool. Wait, so I appreciate obviously Mark. As always, Sully, thanks for doing the hour with us and going through the mock drafts.
Yeah, it was a good time, man.
And thank everybody again.
We got edges. What are we doing?
What's that?
What are we doing next week? Edges, interior defensive linemen. What are we doing?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Edge and interior.
All right, let's knock it out. That's going to be a good class. That's a deep class, man. It's a deep class.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Particularly, I think the edge. When I was going through the edges, crazy. Yeah.
I like it. Good times.
All right. Any final thoughts, Mark?
All right. No, party on, Wayne.
All right. Party on, Mark. Party on, Sully. And we will talk to you guys next week.
See you guys.